The Pez thing, right? Yeah. And my wife, who was my fiance at the time, whenever she hears about it, she rolls her eyes as well, and she's kind of like, "Oh, geez, tell them I'm a management consultant. Tell them I have a master's degree in molecular biology. I am not just this little Pez candy collector." But no, the inspiration, that was part of the inspiration, but frankly, it was a small part of it for me. At the beginning, I didn't get the human side of it that story really embodies now, which is, that's the most important asset and the most important thing of eBay is the human side now. But at the beginning, I didn't get that. For me, it was an experiment. It was like, like I said, I wanted to create an efficient market where individuals could benefit from participating in an efficient market, kind of level the playing field. I thought, gee, the internet, the web, it's perfect for this. And this was more of an intellectual pursuit, than anything else. It was just an idea that I had, and I started it as an experiment, as a side hobby, basically, while I had my day job. And it just it grew. Within 6 months, it was earning revenue that was paying my costs. Within 9 months, the revenue was more than I was making at my day job. And that's kind of when the light bulb went off. And knock, knock, knock. You've got a business here. Do something about it. So that's when that really started. If you think about it, commerce and trade is at the base of all human activity. And it's a bit of an exaggeration, but I like to talk about, in the old days, people would bring their stuff to market and they'd do business, and then they'd go back to, their hillside homes or wherever, and eventually they were doing this enough that you had to build a wall around them to protect them, and that was the birth of cities and so forth. Again, gross generalizations and simplifications, but fundamentally, everything we do in human activity is related to trade, and there's something I think that's wired in human beings that drives us to commerce. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but the human side. So that's the human side I'm referring to. With eBay, it became apparent very quickly, because in order to do a transaction with someone, you actually have to get to know that person and build a trusting relationship first. So you have to build trust before you will enter into a transaction. And so in order to build trust, you have to communicate. You have to get to know one another. And so very quickly, I started getting letters about, actually, some of the early letters were more negative. They were, this guy's a jerk kind of thing. And I said, okay, there's some human element to that I wasn't expecting. Please be nice. Not everyone is a jerk. Maybe there's a misunderstanding. Give people the benefit of the doubt. So very, very quickly, I learned that it was actually the human element that was really driving it more than the commerce. So it was kind of interesting. For the first, I think, 3 years, at least the first 2 full years of our history, we grew at 20 to 30% every single month. And I don't think any other business has seen, every business in the startup phase sees that kind of growth for a short period of time, but for such an extended period of time. And so as we were doing projections in terms of, okay, so this is what we've seen in the past, what can we project for growth next year or next quarter or whatever, so we can do budgeting and all that, we would only say, well, this can't last. This can't last. There's no way you can grow this fast. So clearly, there's no way I anticipated it. And even as we were growing, like even with smart people, when I finally hired, business people to actually, look at this thing, everyone would say, "Oh, no, there's no way it can continue to grow this fast." But it has, which is remarkable. I knock on wood, or the nearest thing, every time I think about it, just with a great community of people that embrace the idea, embrace the values, because it's all about treating each other, the way you want to be treated yourself, so that you can do business with one another, the business just grew, on its own, and we just had to kind of get out of the way and let it grow. So from that side, I know that the job of a typical entrepreneur is a lot harder than that, because I'd done that before, actually. I was a co-founder of another company before eBay. So we had it a lot easier than most. When we went to raise money, for example, rather than trying to convince people to invest in eBay, we had to tell people to stopped knocking on the door, basically. And we had our selection, and we made a choice and found a strategic partner, and we took their money and we put it in the bank and we never touched it. So I mean, yeah, it's mostly success, especially in the early days of eBay. What that brought with it, though, because of the enormous growth and success, it brought a lot of challenges too. You can't predict growth and success. No one in their right mind would predict 30% growth for another year, every month, monthly growth for another year. So we were behind on a lot of things, on a lot of the infrastructure, and we had some fairly public failures in the middle of '99, and where our systems went down for 22 hours and then went down for 8 hours after that. And we had a large community then. I mean, not as large as today, obviously, but still very large. Front page news. We had CNN satellite trucks in the parking lot. I mean, it was big, big. The world is watching. This company's gone. It's going away. And I think failure of that magnitude, or a challenge of that magnitude, is really important, and I'm glad that we faced it so early in our evolution, because Meg, who's the CEO, I brought on Meg in March of '98. She really woke up to the fact that infrastructure and technology was critical, and just really built that organization out over it was a 6 to 9 month process for us to kind of get over that. And so I think those challenges are also really critical, really important, and what you learn from them is, of course, kind of what they say is, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, and it's true. And what you learn from those challenges and those failures are what will get you past the next ones. I was the pretty consistent bull and the cheerleader on eBay, actually. I felt, once I realized the human connection that people were making with one another over the service, I just knew that there's just nothing that can happen that can make it go away. And even after a massive outage like that, you really anger your community. They're depending on, a lot of them depended on us at that time for their livelihood, still do today. So it's really a hardship. Even after that, they come back and they say, okay, well, we know you're doing your best. We're with you. And so I've always had, kind of this unshakable faith that it's going to endure. I hesitate to say that like eBay is going to, it's kind of the way all business is going to be done, or the internet, all business is going to move to, electronic commerce. Not at all. I mean, you still want to go to the mall, you still want to socialize there, you still want to, there's a definite value and a reality to the real world experience. But I do think that what eBay did really was it was create a new market, one that wasn't really there before, and that was a global market for the kind of goods that were usually traded at flea markets and garage sales and this kind of thing. And that was the start of it, and it hadn't existed before. And now it's progressed past that into consumer electronics, computers. A lot of people don't know that, and I'll put a plug in for my business here, but they don't know that kind of every category that we're in addition to collectibles, we're the #1 leader in terms of the dollars traded in that category on the internet, except for books and music, because there's another company that's pretty good at that. But I mean, consumer electronics, computer equipment, sporting goods, everything. It's jewelry. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So that base of kind of the flea market base has really evolved into a market for pretty much everything. I founded the company on the notion that people are basically good, and that if you give them the benefit of the doubt, you're rarely disappointed. And I'm thankful that, in fact, statistics have borne that out to be true. And it is actually 99.999% of our transactions happen without a case of reported fraud. There are 30 cases out of every 1 million transactions where somebody actually goes to the trouble to report fraud. So Presumably there's some unreported level as well that's higher than that. People don't bother. But that is, there's no word to describe it. It's far more than a large majority or most, or whatever. I mean, it's practically all transactions happen without a problem. Now, as the absolute number of transactions have gone up, this is another challenge that we've faced, is that the absolute number of problems has also gone up. And so with the attention that's paid on the company, I mean, you can open the newspaper on any given day and read about the latest, problem that's related to eBay somehow. Whether it's some kind of strange new item being offered on the site or an illegal item or whatever. And so we've had to evolve our strategies and our policies from what I built in the beginning, which was a self-policing community of people, to one where we take a more active role in trying to identify help identify the bad actors. We work with the authorities to go find them to make sure they don't come back, and this sort of thing. This is the first time we have statistical proof, right? I mean, here it is. It's a wide open marketplace, yet only 30 out of 1 million transactions. And it's amazing that ratio has stayed true since we first started measuring it in January of '98. It was like 27 that month. And so even as the number of transactions has exploded, that ratio is still true. The founding standards, again, were that it was a self-policing community, and the community would decide for itself what was appropriate and what was not appropriate. And I created a system of the feedback forum, which I'm very proud of because it's been copied gazillions of times. It was my idea. And so it allows people to kind of rate each other, give feedback on how their transaction went. And if they don't like something that somebody's doing, and enough people don't like it, that person is automatically kicked off of the system. So that worked very well in the early days. As we grew and the community became more diverse, we found that there are certain categories of goods that the majority of the community just didn't want to see, even though maybe it's protected, or even though it's legal. I mean, first of all, illegal goods were never allowed on eBay, never. But legal but questionable goods, we've had to be more active on. And you mentioned AK-47s. So firearms, for example, we decided a while back, I think in '98, pretty early on, I'm not sure about the date, frankly, but we decided to remove those from the site, to say, you know what, eBay is no longer an appropriate venue to trade firearms. And the reason is that the regulations in all the states are so different and so varied that it was hard. It was very easy for a member to accidentally trip over a regulation, and we didn't want them to get into trouble. And at the same time, frankly, Meg's point of view was, like, we don't actually, if somebody buys a gun on eBay and uses that to harm somebody, like, we don't actually want that. So in her mind, she was uncomfortable with it actually from the day she joined the company. So we got rid of that. Adult items is another interesting issue. We had a little lively panel discussion that was related to that earlier today. We actually surveyed our members once a while back in a broad survey about a number of things, but it turned out that we asked whether or not this adult category, should be removed, because there is an adult category on eBay that's segregated from the rest, and 70% of them said no, keep it. And this was a general broad survey, so we think community standards have to be respected, and as long as we segregate this category away from not only minors, because minors aren't supposed to use the site anyway, but we prevent a minor from even viewing the items, then I think we're doing a good job there and addressing that concern. So. I was born in Paris, France. I lived there until I was 6 years old, actually, and went to bilingual school as I was growing up during that period, so I learned English. And at age 6, moved to the United States, moved to the east coast of the U.S., Washington, D.C. area. Grew up in the D.C. area, actually, through high school. Had a brief stint, actually, in Hawaii, junior high school, 8th and 9th grades. Then back to the Washington, D.C. area. College in Boston, and then after college moved to California. It's kind of a resume of where I've been. The longest I was in one place was actually college, was 4 years. Before that was the last 3 years of high school. And before that was really, we were moving every 2 to 3 years. I wasn't part of a military family, which is usually the cause of that. It just kind of happened, I guess. I didn't really realize until we moved after 9th grade, which was my last year in Hawaii, that I missed people. I mean, I'd finally, in 8th and 9th grade, started to make some really close friends in school, and leaving after 9th grade was kind of tough. It was tough for me personally. Before that, it was just kind of, it was what I knew. It was the way I was, raised, and it was fine. There just weren't a lot of kids around, and I think when I was younger, actually, I ended up hanging out with adults a lot more because I had to. And I guess if you forced me to look back, and in retrospect, I may have been cheated a little bit on the childhood side. I kind of grew up very quickly and became a little bit more, a little more mature more quickly, I think, than I see some of my relatives, these days. I was actually interested in gadgets. Little electronic gadgets, whether it was calculators. Actually, I remember early on going out shopping for a calculator, and this was when calculators were like $100, with my dad, I think. And so I was always fascinated by these little gadgets, and I always managed to break them for one reason or another, of course, as kids do. And then I would take them apart and try to fix them, which I was never able to. So. I think it's both my mom and my dad. They were actually separated when I was 2, I think. But my dad was always part of my life. I lived with my mom, but my dad was always around. And I had, I remember younger, when I was, I remember when I was younger, actually spending weekends with my dad, who's a surgeon, a medical doctor, doing rounds with him. And we would, spend maybe 45 minutes in the car going from one hospital to the next, and we'd have some great conversations. And I think that's one of my, fond childhood memories, I think. My dad had the fascinating, and he still does have a fascinating kind of grasp of all things, and talk about history and talk about art. And when I say conversation, actually, probably that's not quite accurate. It was mostly one way. And I think now that I'm older, I'm 33 now, I think he might have, if I was in his shoes, I'd think, well, this kid isn't hearing anything I'm saying, probably, from my reaction. But it's funny that now that I look back on it, it was a precious time for me. I was one of these guys, I think, that didn't really study. So I don't think I was a good student. I was not a good student. In college, and I'll tell you this, I am very proud to say that I graduated from Tufts University with better than a 3.0 average. It was actually 3.01. And during my entire, my 4 years there at Tufts, my GPA actually improved every single semester, which gives you an idea of where I started. So, no, I was not a good student. I was not. I've been asked before, kind of informally, kind of like, who are your heroes, and these types of questions, and I always find it hard to identify, a single, person or a single book or this sort of thing. I've always been kind of more, just forward-looking, and I guess I was raised with the notion that you can do pretty much anything you want. You're able to accomplish anything you set out to accomplish. So I was given this sense of confidence, and I guess I never really felt the need or I've never had the benefit, I should probably say, of being inspired really by, outside kind of heroes. So it's a little bit hard to say. I've always been into the gadgets, and I guess when I first saw a computer, I'm trying to think if it was it might have been 3rd grade. It was pretty early on, actually. And it was an early TRS-80 Radio Shack, kind of the original Radio Shack TRS-80 computer, 4K of memory. I think this one had the 4K or the 8K expansion module, which was like as big as a desk, and learned how to program BASIC on it. And I used to actually cut gym, sneak into the computer room, which wasn't really a room, it was a closet where they kept the computer between classes, and play on the computer. I always kind of just went ahead and tried things. And one of the things that I learned later, more kind of professionally, is that a lot of people don't just go ahead and try things. Like they'll have an idea and they'll convince themselves, or other people will convince them that it can't be done, one or the other. And actually I think that the first is more dangerous and more serious, is convincing yourself that it can't be done. And I never learned that for some reason. So I just kind of had this naive approach to, well, gee, why not? I'll just go ahead and do it. That was my professional debut, $6 an hour, and it's funny too thinking about it, because it was using computer technology, right, to print out library cards for the card and so all it was a program to just format. Somebody would type in the information and it would format it the way the librarian wanted, so they could put the cards in the card catalog. So this is like incredibly basic computer technology. This is no database there, no search engine, nothing like that. But yeah, $6 an hour. And also, at that time I also worked on the software to help schedule classes, which was key. This was in high school, 10th or 11th grade, I think, when I was working on that. And, I resisted the temptation to put in some code in there to make sure I never had classes on Friday, because I wouldn't have been able to get away with it. But I thought about it. I always wanted to be involved with computers. My original kind of career choice, what I thought I was going to do, was more computer engineering, which was, I thought, figure out the hardware and the software, combine the two to learn about computers. When I got to college at Tufts, I was accepted into the engineering school to do an electrical engineering, computer engineering program. I learned quickly there in my first semester, I learned very quickly that the engineering program was a little bit too rigorous for me, and I took a chemistry class, I think that was second semester, freshman year, because it was required for the engineering program, taking chemistry. I had no interest in chemistry, and I worked so hard for that class, trying to understand what was going on, study for the tests and everything. Did so poorly. I remember for the midterm, I studied harder than I had for anything else, and got a 25 out of 100 on the test. And it was at that point I said, you know what, like, this is kind of ridiculous. So I transferred out of the engineering college, went to liberal arts, and just did the pure computer science. When I was in college, I taught myself how to program the Macintosh. A big foundation actually for that was a class. So it wasn't completely self-taught. It was a C programming class called Data Structures. It was the big kind of the weed out class for the computer science program. Learned how to program C. Great professor, probably one of the best I've ever had. And a couple things stem from that story. The first is that professor eventually had to leave the school. He was a great teacher, but apparently he never published anything. And so they asked, like, he had to leave, and that was a scandal, at least in my mind. So I don't know what exactly that taught me, but it did have an impact on me. And yeah. And then second, I learned how to program C, and then I used that ability to teach myself how to program the Macintosh, which I was just very excited about learning everything I could about it. And of course, that's how I began actually my professional career. Was after college, actually a year before graduating from college, I took a summer job in California working at a software company for the Macintosh. I was just pursuing what I enjoyed doing. I mean, I was pursuing my passion. And the whole, the ability to create software that could have a benefit or an impact on people that used it was what was driving me. And so I was driven by, mass market software and the whole notion of just being able to do neat things. And like most, software people, it is very much a passion more than anything else. And so, like people have said, it's not really work. If you're having fun, it's not work. So that was the case with me. I've got a passion for solving a problem that I think I can solve in a new way, and that maybe it helps that nobody's done it before as well. I mean, we always have there's a sense of pride of doing something brand new, and I'm particularly inspired by problems that seem easily solvable. Not the difficult problems that some of the physicists that are here, for example, are talking about, but problems that seem easily solvable that no one's bothered to attack because they think it's impossible. And so with eBay, I mean, it was the whole idea there was just to help people do business with one another on the internet, and people thought it was impossible because how could people on the internet, remember this was 1995, how could they trust each other? How could they get to know each other? And I thought that was silly. It was a silly concern because people are basically like good, honest people. So that that was very motivating. It was, gee, I'll just do it. I'll show them. Let's see what happens. Oh, if they say, I want to do exactly what you did and compete with eBay, I say, yeah, don't bother. Don't quit your day job. No, but that's pretty rare. I love actually coming to these kinds of venues where I talk to students and young people because they're very passionate and they have great ideas. And what I tell them is a number of things. First of all, I say that you should pursue your passion. If you're passionate about something and you work hard, then I think you'll be successful. If you start a business because you think you're going to make a lot of money at it, then you probably won't be successful because that's the wrong reason to start a business. You have to really believe in what you're doing, be passionate enough about it so that you will put in the hours and the hard work that it takes to actually succeed there, and then you'll be successful. And I have a couple other little things I tell them. I say, when you look at the accomplishments of accomplished people, and you say, boy, that must have been really hard. When you look at something that looks hard, that was probably easy. And conversely, when you look at something that looks easy, that was probably hard. And so you're never going to know which is which until you actually go and do it. So just go and do it, try, learn from it. You'll fail at some things. That's a learning experience that you need so that you can take that on to the next experience. And don't let people who you may respect and who you believe know what they're talking about, don't let them tell you it can't be done. Because often they will tell you it can't be done, and it's just because they don't have the courage to try it. I think absolutely nice guys can make it. In fact, especially in my business, eBay, which is all based on people doing business with one another. Take a little aside here attacking that question. What I tell people all the time, internally and externally, about eBay is that it's not like a retail experience. If you think about a retail environment where people are buying things in a retail environment, the retailer has a whole bunch of control. They choose the products, they design the store or the catalog, they train the salespeople, they control the experience. And if there's a problem with a salesperson, they retrain and so on and so forth. At eBay, our customer's experience is based on how one customer interacts with another customer, okay? And you can't control customer behavior. So the only thing you can do is have a certain set of values that you encourage people to adopt. And the only way your customers are going to adopt those values is if they see that you're living those values as well. So when I say that I believe people are basically good, it's because I believe people are basically good. I mean, it's not something that I came up with for eBay. And if I say that you should treat people with the benefit of the doubt, it's because I believe in that as a way of life. And we have to do it internally at eBay, at the company, as well, because if we don't, then eventually that seeps through, and customers will see that, and that will harm our business, because we can't control customer behavior, so our business is based on that. So it's a long-winded way of saying that nice guys, quote unquote, responsible company that has its heart in the right place, that is real human, that's run by real human beings, it has to be successful, because if we weren't that way, eBay would not be successful. eBay wouldn't exist. It would not be possible. So, so there you go. The big opportunity that I see now is kind of shepherding this wealth that's been created into our philanthropic goals, and those goals have to do with kind of rekindling a sense of community, reminding people that there's a benefit. It's important to be part of your community, and there's a benefit that comes with being part of your community, and that's something that in America we've lost a little bit, I think. But the value is still there. In fact, the core values of community are still there in America, and they just need to be rekindled a little bit, I think. I look at it as a deep and heavy responsibility, in fact, to make sure that that wealth goes to good use, because it's very simple. An enormous amount of wealth has been created in this business, even in my business, and it's unmeasurable. My personal wealth is far beyond what any normal human being will ever need in their lifetime, for themselves, for their family, for their descendants, for generations. A small piece of what I have is enough for that. And so the rest of it, I don't want to see it go to waste. So I have a responsibility to make sure it's put to good use. And, I feel I'm benefiting from the market success of a great business that has been built by regular, ordinary people who are, logging on every day and doing business with one another. And that's something that I have to give back. I mean, it's just I have to do it. I have to make sure that that wealth is put to good use. So it's a learning process, I think, for us and for my wife and I as we think about that. And as I've said, we have 50 years ahead of us, hopefully, at least, as philanthropists. So we've got a long-term horizon here. So. There are a number of issues. Definitely, the internet is changing everything. It has changed the world in such a short period of time, and will continue to change things in very positive ways that we've yet to anticipate, I believe. At the same time, though, if you look at it in just this last few years of time, the market has got away from itself a little bit. And a lot of businesses were created that should never have been created, that should never have been funded, that should never have been brought to the public markets. And it created an impression that it was really easy to make a lot of money with a stupid idea, basically. And so a lot more people said, gee, great, it was working for that guy, so I should come in and do the same thing. And whereas, MBA candidates just a few years ago, MBA graduates a few years ago, were going into consulting jobs and the like, now they're all starting up companies. And, some of that, it's a good thing. I mean, I want people to try. I want people to be entrepreneurs and go out and try it. But I want them to do it for the right reasons, because they think they can change the world, because they think they've got something of value to give to the world, not because they think they can make a lot of money. That's the wrong way to do anything. And so it's created there's been a bit of a negative effect on the Valley, in particular, Silicon Valley. We left Silicon Valley. We don't live there anymore, partly for that reason. And it's created also a bit of a negative effect, I think, with consumers as well, in that it's created unrealistic expectations in some cases. The expectation that a valuable service should be provided free of charge. And in some cases, that a valuable service should be provided only if the service provider pays you as a customer. So it's worse than free. So it's some crazy things like that. And I think it's going to take some time to unwind and recover from that. In Silicon Valley, it is. I think there's been a big problem in the last few years. public servants like police officers and firemen and teachers and so forth cannot live in the communities that they serve. They can't afford to own a home, much less even rent a home in those communities. They drive 2 hours to get to work every day. And when you have, you know, your community beat cop police officer, you know, not being a part of your community, that's bad. That really hurts. Not to mention other, you know, other service workers and you know, other lower wage earners that have just had to leave. It's a problem. It's a serious problem. I'm very excited by the prospect of what we haven't seen yet. You know, it's the year 2000 now. The web was invented in '93. People graduating from college this year entered college with the web. And just in a matter of years, people graduating from college will have entered high school with the web, and it will have existed as part of their being. You know, I'm too old for that. I grew up kind of in the software world. You know, I grew up in a technology environment, but it was software, and it was all about building software packages that could solve people's problems and change the world. But now, kids are growing up and going into the workforce with the background of growing up with the web, with a global communication medium that is interactive, that people can, you know, congregate around. And I think it's exciting to see what kinds of ideas they will come up with, things that are just that the world has never seen before. So that's what I'm waiting for. If we can help people reconnect with their communities, I think we can work together as a global community and solve the world's problems. You know, it's a bit idealistic, but we're really looking kind of for second-order effects in what we're doing. In other words, if we can just get people to just reconnect with their community, just realize that you're an individual, but you have a responsibility to be part of your community. And that responsibility is not just a burden, but it also comes with benefits that are real tangible benefits that you'll see being a part of that community. Then just think if everyone thought like that, you could actually tackle local community problems, homelessness, you know, healthcare, I mean, just serious problems, and you could tackle global problems as well. Because we now have, again, a global communications medium, and communities are being built not just in the real world, but in the virtual world as well. So I'm very hopeful that the reconnection with community that frankly, I first became passionate about because of eBay, because I saw it happen on eBay. I'm very hopeful that that reconnection is going to dramatically improve